Always a pleasure when Mike Gill comes on every Monday morning here on Good Morning NFC East. I'll be on the Sports Bash later tonight with Mike Gill. But, Mike, I know you're getting up here. It's early. But I have to – everybody wants to be negative about how many points the Eagles gave up and how bad special teams were. Fun. I got all week to talk about that. What a performance on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to show somebody a tape and say, "Hey, this is a clinic and an ass kicking in the run game," they just absolutely dominated up front and had their way. They absolutely showed that if we need to, we can win in this manner. Now, the cynic would say they did that a lot last year and played against a good defense, which Green Bay is not. They struggle against the run. Can they run the ball against some of the better defenses out there? I don't know. Show me some of the better run defenses. Who are they? And then I might have an answer for you. I don't know that those teams are in your way this time around. But, yeah, I mean, every week we can pull something out to complain about. But if you really want to look at last night, it was a dominance. And, look, that game, all these games have ebb and flows from week to week. And last night was a game where Aaron Rodgers was on his game. I mean, he was throwing the ball and he was getting it out, and he had guys, they were running the ball pretty well. I thought the Eagles defense, while they were not great last night, there were some short fields that they got put in a couple times and ended up giving up 7 instead of 3. I think that was a big difference for them. They did not have a good night last night, but overall, the run game, it was about as dominant of a unit that we saw the entire NFL weekend.
That entire game, even when they blew the early lead, and again, it's early in the game, and they blew it so quick. But I just kept thinking to myself, okay, is Green Bay really going to beat them? Because they can't stop the run. It's almost like they decided, you know what, Jalen Hurts, you're going to beat us with your legs. That's a really bad idea.
Well, it really stems from the decision early in the game when the Eagles went for it on 4th down and ended up not getting it. But it showed you right then and there, we know they can't stop us. So whether we get this or not and whatever ends up happening, in the end, they're just not going to stop us. So if we have to win 40-33, so be it. But that's what this game's going to end up being. Like I felt like the Eagles went in knowing on that night that Green Bay is just not going to be able to figure out a way to stop us on offense. So we'll take some chances. We'll do some, we went for it on 4th down on our own end of the field, and that kind of got Green Bay back into the game early. But overall, I mean, again, I go back to you're talking about running the football. Last year, Tampa Bay had this great run defense. You ran into them. They stopped you. San Francisco, are they good against the run? They're solid against the run. Minnesota, you've already shown they can't stop you on the ground. Dallas certainly won't stop you on the ground. Is there an NFC team out there that you are saying if you get stuck facing them in Philadelphia, keep that in mind. Right now, you're playing at home. Who is going to be able to load up and stop you on the run? I don't know that team exists in the NFC.
I think there's only one team that can stop the Eagles on the ground. That's the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't even know how they do that. They're
coaching. They can throw all
if
day.
They choose not to run, right? Realistically, their offensive line dominated the game up front. And look, Miles Sanders had an outstanding game. It was weird though. They started. Was he in? I didn't catch all the post game. It was a little late, but. Was he in trouble? Like, what was up? They
just – it's more – I think Nick will get asked this more in the week, but it seems like it's a situational type thing. Like, it's nothing against Miles. They just kind of rotate guys. Like, Miles was in good spirits last night.
But they started the game last night with Boston Scott. Gainwell got mixed in way more than I've seen him all season long. But I'm not complaining. I'm just wondering, did he get disciplined or something? Was that?
I think that's a good thing, honestly. Like Gainwell got in as much as he did because I thought Gainwell's been absolutely terrible this year, and they're getting him involved now, and he played a huge role in that game last night.
Oh, no, I'm not complaining. I'm just wondering. I mean, Sanders, Scott started the game. Gainwell was in. Gainwell was in on the goal line early in that game. He had the 2 goal line carries, ended up scoring the touchdown, actually. And then Boston Scott had he was the guy who started the game last night. So they had all 3 guys mixed in there. But Sanders had, I think he had 147 yards. I think it was maybe a career high for him last night. I did see him in his post game. He was the first guy that came out, and he hit. And I thought someone said, "Hey, you had a career high," and he said, "Oh, I didn't know that." But yeah, I mean, they dominated that game up front. But you're going to look at the score, and I'm sure more people want to pick apart what happened negatively because that's just the nature of the beast out there. But I really thought that when you watch that game, you just felt Green Bay wasn't stopping you the entire game.
Yeah, it really was. And like,
almost to the point, Jeff, where when they scored that touchdown with, I don't know, it was like 9 minutes left in the game to get it back to a 1-score game. There's 9 minutes left in the game. They scored a touchdown. There was the Watson score. He had like a 60-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, by the way, heck of a throw by Jordan Love on that one.
Yeah, he came in and played pretty well. And there's a lot of orthogonal takes we can throw out with the symmetry of where Love enters the game in his career and the date to when Rodgers entered the game in his career when Brett Favre got hurt. It's virtually the same day. It's unbelievable.
I can't remember who tweeted it last night. It might have been Field Yates. It might have been Jeremy Fowler, who was at the game last night. I'm trying to remember who it was, but they said, think about this for a second. This might be the last time we ever see Aaron Rodgers take a snap.
Yeah, it was November, I don't know, 29th, whatever year that he came in for an injured Brett Favre, and then Favre never. Yep, and Favre never came back and played quarterback for the Packers. I actually was driving around down the shore yesterday listening to 97.3, and our local show, one of the hosts said he felt that that if Rodgers, I can't remember exactly what he said because I was kind of like, I don't. Basically, if Love gets in the game tonight, which was last night, or hurt or something, that Rodgers may never. That the season's done. They're done. They're 4-8. They're out. Right. So do they just leave Love in there? Do they just say, you know what, we're going to shut you down for the rest of the year, and then we never see Aaron Rodgers play for the Packers again? I don't know. That might have been last night. You might have seen Aaron Rodgers play for the Packers for the last time.
It was so weird too. So I'm not paying attention to I'm paying attention to other stuff, right? But I just happened to catch at the corner of my eye him going into the locker room. And I'm like, wait, that's Aaron Rodgers. Because I'm so far, I'm high up. And I'm like, wait, where's he going? And it was quick. And I started thinking too, I'm like, is he going to come back? This doesn't look like a bathroom break here. Then I find out last night after the game, which ironically, I can't find out anything about the Eagles and their injuries. And Aaron Rodgers goes, oh, it was my ribs, not my oblique. I'm like, what? So you actually had a worse injury, and apparently he hurt that really early in the game and just tried to fight through it.
Yeah, and you could see on whatever drive it was, his last drive, that he was certainly not himself, but for what he was doing was he was having a look. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greats of all time. He's one of the greats of all time. I love when Eagles fans are complaining or just incensed about the fact that the defense did not play well last night. Look, I will be the first to say that the Packers offense has been a dumpster fire this year. They've been terrible, but they've put 31 points on the board 2 weeks ago against the Dallas Cowboys, who everybody seems to love all of a sudden. The Eagles defense last night had a tough time with Aaron Rodgers because he was spinning it, man. He was having a night. He was getting it out quick. He was finding guys. And look, early in the season, when that team was really struggling, Christian Watson was not a part of their offense. Now they have made him a much bigger part of the offense to the point that my buddy texted me last night and said, "Who's this Watson guy?" I said, "Have you been watching the last couple of weeks?"
Last 3 weeks.
Exactly. But the average fan, I don't think, understands that, hey, as seasons go on, things materialize and evolve and you change and get better. Watson is a second-round kid from North Dakota who just wasn't really finding his way, and now all of a sudden he's kind of that light's gone on for him, and him and Rodgers are starting to connect, and that has really added to their offense big time. Not to mention they run the ball very well. I just thought the Eagles' defense was blah last night. Now
it was. It wasn't. And you're right. Like Aaron Rodgers looked like MVP Aaron Rodgers last night, but I mean the play of the night was Reed Blankenship just picking off Aaron.
Well, I was going to finish, Jeff, and say their defense looked blah last night, but in the end, they had 2 interceptions, they had 3 sacks. I mean, every game has a personality, and in the personality of that game, they got stops, they got turnovers. Did they play great? No, they did not have a great night overall. But the offense gave them some short fields. I mean, you had a couple of the special teams are dreadful. They've been dreadful, and the special teams put them in some bad spots last night. And normally, when they're in those bad spots, they've given up field goals. This night, they gave up touchdowns. And if you're going to give up touchdowns, you're going to see a scoreboard that makes you think like, oh, this defense stinks. The defense doesn't stink. They didn't have a great night last night, but one of the reasons was you had an all-timer playing at a pretty high level for 3 quarters last night.
It's amazing what happens when really good quarterbacks, and again, like you said, an all-timer, when they get a short field. That wasn't Daniel Jones back there. That wasn't Cooper Rush playing on the short field. That was Aaron Rodgers. That's one of the greatest of all time. He's one of them, and he made you pay. And I'm telling you, Mike, I don't want to be too negative today, but if they lose a playoff game, it's going to be because of that Michael Clay and that special teams unit.
Well, look no further than the team across the field. Last year, I would think most people would think Green Bay was the favorite in the NFC last year. They lost that playoff game last year to San Francisco because their special teams was inadequate. So, yeah, if the Eagles are going to have something that they need to try to figure out between now and the end of the season, is they have to figure out what they can do with that special teams unit, which, they had the special teams problem last night, 2 or 3 returns that they just did not cover very well. A.J. Brown had a fumble that resulted into a big return that gave him a short field. So you had that. Then you had them go for it on 4th down. They don't get that. So that's another short field.
By the way, the A.J. Brown thing, you heard about that, right?
Well, I mean, I get it. It was Thanksgiving week, so maybe people weren't really paying all that close of attention. But the guy was vomiting. He blew a blood vessel. Did you see his eye last night?
I was right next to him. I'm like, oh my God. Like, he looked like it. Not that he blew a blood vessel. He looked like he was just on whatever you could say he was on. Like, I mean, you could tell like it was bothering him last night. But I give the guy a lot of credit. Like, he was more than willing to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, overall, look, I mentioned this maybe last week on your show. I've talked about it on my show, but last year, the Rams, who won the Super Bowl, had a 3-game losing streak in the middle of the season. And it just goes to show that even the very best teams just don't play their best and just go through the roller coaster of the 17 games. I would venture to say that the Eagles are going through part of that roller coaster right now. But at the end of the ride, they keep winning. So while they're not playing their best on all sides of the ball, they are finding ways to win. Whether you're impressed with the aesthetics of the victory, that can be certainly discussed. But realistically, throughout a 17-game season, people will forget that the Super Bowl champions lost 3 straight games last year. You won't remember who they lost to or how they lost those games, but I'm telling you they did because I did the research, and the Eagles haven't had that 3-game losing stretch yet. They haven't had that where they look bad one night and it cost them. They're finding the ways. Jason Kelce said it last night that they're finding ways. Good teams do it. We all know that, but nobody wants to really take it to heart that the good teams find ways because we want to try to pick apart. Well, they haven't played anybody and they're not playing good teams. Did you hear a comment? The Kansas City game yesterday, they're playing the Rams, who stink out loud, by the way. And Kevin Burkhardt and Greg Olson, who did the game, said, well, Kansas City, they've played the easiest schedule in the league, and they have the easiest schedule coming up. No one seems to complain that Kansas City's playing a pretty easy schedule, or that they have.
Here's the thing, though. That's incorrect, because I've done the research on that. They actually play one of the tougher schedules early. But yeah, you're right. Like, them and Baltimore play the easiest schedule the rest of the way. But is that Kansas City's fault? No. You're beating the teams you're supposed to beat. And I wish people would understand that with the Eagles. There's only one team in the National Football League to beat 2 8-win teams, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, we talk about this a lot. There's nobody to beat, because anybody you beat, everybody has picks them apart. They're not as good. They're not all that good. I'm not impressed with them. I don't like Minnesota. I don't like Washington. I don't like. And to the point where you get through every single team, and it's like, well, who do you like? Nobody. I mean, statistically speaking, Kansas City may have. I just heard the comment from. I don't know who they've played and who they haven't played, but I would venture to say, if I went and looked at their schedule and I started ripping down their wins, you wouldn't be like, well, they beat that team. They lost to Indianapolis, by the way. So no one seems to have a problem that Kansas City lost to Indianapolis, but Philadelphia detractors would say, well, the Eagles only beat the Colts by a point, and they didn't look all that good, and it was kind of a sloppy game. They beat Kansas City, and nobody seems to care that Kansas City lost that game.
But would you rather be the Ravens, where you lead by a lot every game and blow double-digit leads? Would you rather be them? They're 7-4 right now. I keep saying, the Ravens are good, but sooner or later, that's who you are. Like, you're blowing games. And by the way, it's not the quarterback either. It's your defense.
By the way, Kansas City this year, they beat Arizona, not very impressive.
Yeah, Arizona stinks.
They beat the Chargers, who are meh. They lost to the Colts. They beat a mediocre, I think we're being kind, Tampa Bay team. They beat Vegas by a point.
They stink.
They lost to Buffalo.
But by the way, can I go on here and say the NFC West is garbage? It's
sure, I'll give you garbage. That. They beat San Francisco on the road. That's their win right there. They beat Tennessee in overtime. They beat Jacksonville, the Chargers, and the Rams. Are you all that impressed with that schedule? I think Jeff's frozen over there. Tone.
Did I freeze? Oh, they're being who they should beat, Mike. I mean,
I'm saying everybody's talking about Philadelphia's schedule not being very challenging. Are you impressed with that Kansas City schedule? They beat San Francisco. That's a good win. I'll give them that win. But who else have they beaten? Who else have the Chiefs beaten?
San Francisco. Yeah, they had McCaffrey that game. That's right. They did have McCaffrey that game. But you're right.
It was October 23rd on the road. I mean, San Francisco was banged up pretty bad on defense on that side of the ball. Look, but I like San Francisco. And I like Kansas City, by the way. But my point is, Kansas City hasn't beaten anybody. I mean, they have not won a game that you're like, all right, well.
Here's one. Who are the 49ers beaten?
I don't think people right now, I like the 49ers. And part of the problem with them is they've been so banged up. And now they're starting to get healthy. And as they've gotten healthy, now yesterday, offensively, they struggled. I mean, they shut New Orleans out, New Orleans is on that good. But San Francisco really hasn't beaten anybody either. Realistically, their best win is against Seattle.
Who might not be that good. They're out of the playoffs right now.
Right. Their best win is against a Seattle team that is completely overachieving. Other than that, they've beaten the Rams twice, who were horrible. They beat Carolina, who's terrible. They beat Arizona, and they beat New Orleans.
Yeah, we're world beaters.
But
this league stinks. It stinks, Mike.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You could pick any team that you're somewhat impressed with, and then look at their schedule and say, well, they haven't really beaten anybody. Nobody has. Nobody has beaten anybody because there is nobody that is. It's just a bunch of good teams. There's no real elites.
The Eagles have the two most impressive wins in the National Football League this year. Everybody wants to call the Cowboys Super Bowl team. The Eagles beat them. Everybody wants to say the Vikings are contenders. Well, the Eagles beat them. So they're the wins. That you want to pick apart the Eagles. Well, the Eagles beat the Cowboys. I don't want to hear about Cooper Rush. I said it on air. I said it anywhere. I said I don't want to hear Dallas and Cooper Rush. Eagles won a Super Bowl backup quarterback before. Don't want to hear it.
Well, that and the fact that there was a point when Cooper Rush was playing that the Cowboy fans actually were starting to lean that they would rather
controversy going into that game. Oh, and Cooper Rush wins this game, he should start with Dak. The Rams exposed Cooper Rush. The Rams of all teams.
Well, the Rams do play good defense, including yesterday. Their defense kept them in that game against Kansas City. And that's another thing. Look, Kansas City's at home, and they struggled a bunch of times this year offensively against some teams. They struggled against Tennessee at home. They struggled against the Rams at home yesterday. They've had a couple games where their offense is not the same, as explosive as they can be, and they are at times. The reason, it's not the reason, Patrick Mahomes is really good. But the reason to me that Mahomes is the MVP of the league, no offense to Jalen Hurts and what he's done, is that any other quarterback in that Rams offense, you've got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, realistically, their defense isn't all that good. And offensively, other than Travis Kelce, they don't have a lot of great components at wide receiver. But Patrick Mahomes is putting that team to basically be a flawless Super Bowl contender to fans. That team is not flawless. They may be a Super Bowl contender. It's for one reason. Patrick Mahomes, their defense, not very good. They don't move the ball against good defenses because they don't have speed on the outside. The Pacheco kid has come in and really given them a lift in the run game. That kid reminds me of like a young Roger Craig, man. He just never stops moving his legs. His feet are just constantly moving. And I watched that kid play in high school. He's from down here.
Yeah, he's from your area, isn't he?
He's from Vineland. He played quarterback in high school. I mean, so he didn't even play running back until he got to college, and it's because Rutgers is such a dumpster fire. No offense to the Rutgers people, but they had to put him at running back because they didn't have anybody else. He started there as a freshman. From where that kid has gotten them, but they have no weapons on the outside, that Kansas City team. And for some reason, this is the power of branding. Right? This is the power of branding. Kansas City was branded as a Super Bowl champion because of who they are. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, the success they've had.
And they have the most dangerous combination in all football. Andy
Reid and
Patrick Mahomes.
As
long as they got them, they're going to be in it.
Reid and Mahomes give them credibility. It exceeds the credibility that maybe they should have. But as we sit here and talk about Philadelphia hasn't beaten anybody, Kansas City has beaten even less. So if we still think Kansas City's the best team and the Super Bowl champions, you got to look at their schedule and wonder what happens when they start to play better teams. And we've seen it. They went to overtime against the Titans. They got challenged yesterday against the Rams, a bad Rams team. But the Rams play good defense. And that is something you have to look at. As this season's starting to materialize, we're starting to see things. Philadelphia, Kansas City, Buffalo. I got to put Miami in there. To me, Miami.
Oh, Miami's in there. Miami's easily in there.
I do my fine five, ugly five on Wednesdays. Miami is in my fine five right now. They are in my five. When Tua plays, they are tough, man. And their defense.
I'll tell you what, I'm worried, though, with Toronto Armstead getting hurt. Tua was sacked 4 times in 9 plays yesterday. And they were up by so much. But an overreaction Monday for me?
Yeah. I mean,
it's going to work out.
You remember the night Philadelphia played Houston, and they got a bunch of sacks against Hurts too. That game was out of hand. It was 30-0 at one point, I think, yesterday.
Houston is by far the worst team in this league. They're terrible.
They have been number 1 in my ugly 5 for probably the last 5 weeks. The teams behind them in the ugly 5 have kind of bounced around. This is a league filled with parity, even at the bottom. I mean, the 5 worst teams. I guess Denver's got to be in there. Their offense
is the Russell Wilson thing yesterday.
That thing is going to be interesting. They paid him a lot of money, and I don't know what you do because now
you had a defensive tackle basically say show the you know what up.
Yeah. Oh, he got in his face, and Russell Wilson was like, okay. I feel like Russell Wilson's answer in that moment, I wish we could have Hard Knocks do something, would be like, I just got paid, dude. Get out of my face.
You got to watch Hard Knocks with the Cardinals because
I actually watched it. I watched the first.
I'm really curious about this week's episode just because of Kyler Murray's little comments yesterday.
Yeah, I watched the first 3 episodes, and I tweeted out the other night, watching this Hard Knocks, it shows me exactly why this Arizona Cardinals team stinks.
Yep. Yeah.
Cliff Kingsbury, and when they hired him, he has no business being an NFL head coach. Maybe an offensive coordinator. What's that?
Losing record in college.
He had a losing record in college. I watched those teams a lot in college. Now, he had Patrick Mahomes in college and couldn't win with Patrick Mahomes in college. Or at least win impressively. When they hired him, I remember. And then, it was like, okay, maybe I was wrong. No, the guy has zero leadership ability. He is so passive. He wants nothing to do with being a leader. Now, could Cliff Kingsbury maybe be an offensive coordinator if that's all he had to pay attention to and design an offense and call plays? Maybe. He has no business being a head coach. And Steve Keim, by the way, who seems like a nice guy, when you hear and you see him sitting there with the owner, fist pounding the owner all the time, and you're like, this guy's been the GM of this team for 20 years, or he's been with them for 20 years. You're thinking, what is he doing? That organization is
a family. That's how they are. It's
dumpster fire. Dumpster. Yeah. Like, for them to get exposed on that Hard Knocks like that, I feel bad for them. I don't know that other people are looking at it the way that I am, but I'm watching this saying, now I know why the Arizona Cardinals stink. My God.
I tell people this is why you got to watch Hard Knocks. Like last year, you saw the Colts collapse every single week. How does this happen? Like, watch the Hard Knocks. It's every week. Every single week. There's nothing scripted here.
Well, and guess what? As much as I think, Kingsbury's not a leader, Kyler Murray's not a winning player.
No, he's not a winner.
He's just not a winning player.
Mentality.
His face looks like I'm a loser. He just has it written on his face. And he's slamming his helmet when they lose the game. I mean, dude, you're just like, come on, man. That organization. But this goes back to, Arizona is one of the teams that Philadelphia beat. It's one of the teams that Kansas City beat. It's one of the teams that San Francisco beat. And those are three of the best.
Arizona went man coverage against Patrick Mahomes in week 1. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, don't do that to him. Jalen Hurts, he's another one. You don't put man coverage on Jalen Hurts.
It's interesting because I do feel bad for Vance Joseph. I do feel like he's one guy in Arizona that kind of maybe gets it, and he's stuck in this, a cesspool of
this time warp. He can't get out of it.
He's stuck in this cesspool of ineptitude and can't figure out, how I got here. How did I get stuck with this situation? But hey, listen, I know it's Good Morning NFC East, and we probably got to get ready to go. But Dallas and the Giants, who happened way back on Thursday, that was a very interesting game. But it goes to show, everything goes to show this week. Dallas wins 40-3 one week, and we're so impressed. And they're Dallas, and they look great, and here they come.
They look great on Thursday.
They did not look good, but that's the short week. I'm not looking at them so much. But Minnesota bounces back from that game. Not that Minnesota, I don't take Minnesota all that serious. But one of the things I thought happened in that Dallas game was when Darrisaw went out. That changed the complexion of that game big time. But Dallas on Thursday, I don't know if it's the short week or what, but they really in the first half struggled to kind of find out who they were. But their defense, again, their defense is going to be interesting. I think their defense is definitely going to be – look, the story for them is going to be if they're a wild card team, I don't think they're making it. If they can somehow catch Philadelphia, win that game, pass them, and they get the home field, that team can represent the NFC. But to me, that's their only path is they have to get home field.
The Cowboys are the most dangerous team in the NFL when you're trailing against them. And the second if Micah Parsons and those guys can tee off on your quarterback, you're not beating them. But
especially if you're the Giants, you can't throw the ball to begin with, and then you're down in that game, and you have to try to get yourself back in the game. That was a bad rep.
You have no one to throw to either.
That's what I'm saying. They had their passing game is just elementary at this point. It's very weak. But look, Dallas wins again. Minnesota wins again. My point is and Washington's coming too, by the way. I said last week.
By the way, I wanted to ask you this. Before I let you go, all 4 NFC East teams are right now in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Does that stay that way or does one get out?
I have on Tuesdays, I do who's in, who's out when I pick my 14 playoff teams. last week, my who's in, who's out had Washington, New York, Dallas, and Philadelphia all in. The one that I would be worried about would be the Giants. The Giants schedule down the stretch.
Yeah,
the Giants schedule down the stretch is very difficult, and I don't know where the Giants are going to scrape out 2 more wins. They're going to have to get 2 more wins. Now, look, can they beat Philadelphia and split? I wouldn't be shocked if a division game against your rival. I wouldn't be shocked if New York found a win against Philadelphia somewhere. Can they beat?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't be shocked if that game didn't mean anything for Philly and the Giants. They got to find 2 more wins minimally somewhere on that schedule.
Look at Washington. Mike, I'm being told it's time. I could talk this with you for hours and hours and hours, but we will do it at 5:30 tonight on the Sports Bash.
Yeah, we'll keep it going.
Yeah, all right, Mike. Once again, thanks for coming on, my friend. Appreciate it. Get some sleep.
Sounds good, man.